Hey, this is Justin, also known as MAME-FAN on YouTube, and I'm going to do a comparison of my VR headsets. First of all, the first PC headset I got was a Oculus Rift DK2, because I went to a museum exhibition that was showing them, and I was pretty amazed by it. I think my cat might want to. Oh, she's freaking out. She's freaking out because she's seeing video on the screen. Anyway, I was amazed by it. Then my girlfriend bought me the DK2, and then I got a Gear VR for my Note 4 which I had at the time. Then when the Oculus Rift pre-order happened, I got that. I mean, I pre-ordered it. Then I pre-ordered an HTC Vive, but the first thing to arrive was the HTC Vive, and it came with motion controllers. Where's my Vive? Here's the Vive. It came with motion controllers, and at the time that seemed like, well, this is obviously the best thing. And I hadn't even gotten my Oculus Rift yet. Like the Oculus Rift pre-order happened first, but the Vive, beat the Rift. My Vive came in like April 2016, and I think the Rift came like, I don't know, maybe the next month, something like that. And so the Vive and the Rift are both 1080 by 1200 per eye, which is 2160 by 1200. And they're both. Here's the Rift. I got the Rift. This isn't the same Rift I pre-ordered. I got this one last year, like a year ago, because the one I pre-ordered I ended up selling immediately. Like I didn't even open the box because it didn't have touch controllers. They weren't even out yet. So I just said, well, I'll just stick with Vive. Anyway, these are both 2160 by 1200 pentile OLED displays. So what they both have is they have this diamond pattern, pixel pattern, which is ends up with pretty obvious screen door effect. So that's one of the main drawbacks of them. So it's like 2.59 million pixels total in these displays. If you compare the two, I think Vive has slightly more field of view, but Rift has slightly less screen door effect, probably because it has slightly less field of view. And I don't know if Oculus did something extra. Like sometimes I feel like maybe they put some sort of diffusion layer between the screen and to kind of like hide the pixels a little bit, because for some reason the Oculus Rift isn't as bright and the colors aren't as vivid as they are on the Vive. That's one reason I like the Vive so much. So the Oculus Rift obviously comes with these integrated headphones, and Vive doesn't. This is a deluxe audio strap that costs $100 that I added on. So the original Vive strap isn't very good, and you have to use your own headphones. So that's another $100 right there. And what else about them? On both of them I have VR covers. So that red thing is the thinnest pleather VR cover you can get, and then on the Vive I have the thinnest 6 millimeter VR cover you can get also. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, it has those little holes in it. Um, so I use the Rift just for Rift exclusives pretty much. Or if there's a game, like a Steam game that for whatever reason doesn't work well with this Vive. Like here's a difference, another key difference between these two is that the Vive has this controller with a trackpad and you use that to move around, whereas the Rift has this controller with a thumbstick. A lot of people prefer the thumbstick because they're more used to that, and I don't know. I've gotten so used to the Vive trackpad that I kind of prefer that because your thumb can just slide on this. You don't even have to press. If the game is designed properly, you don't even have to press on this. You just kind of effortlessly slide your thumb around. Whereas with the Oculus Touch, it's just like an Xbox 360 controller. It's actually the thumbstick's smaller. It's a lot smaller. So I kind of feel like I'm playing a video game when I use these instead of, I don't know. I don't know why I prefer this, but I think most people don't. One drawback about these touchpads is that I don't know. Sometimes even if your thumb is off of them, your character can keep moving in the direction you last touched. I don't know if that's some software issue or a hardware issue, or what. But then there are games where you have to press the touchpad to actually move, and that's terrible. Because like pressing these isn't that great if you have to just like keep pressing them. Um, Early games, you pressed it to make like a teleport arc appear, and then you let go, and that's how you teleport. But any game where you have to press the trackpad to move, I'm not a fan of that. But luckily, in Steam VR setting, like controller bindings, you can usually fix that to change any press to move to a touch to move. Another difference is these touch controllers, they have a capacitive touch thing. So like when your thumb is on like a thumbstick or the buttons, the controllers actually know it even without you pressing. And when you take your thumb off, your hand in the game, the thumb would stick up. And when you touch here, the thumb will go back down. Stuff like that. Oh, and your finger. This trigger button here is a capacitive touch button. So if you take your finger off of it, your finger in the game will point. And the Vive controller can't do anything like that. There's no capacitive touch sensor or anything like that. And this uses the Rift and its controllers use something called constellation tracking, which is cameras that track the infrared light that is emitted from the Rift and the touch controller. Whereas with Vive, it has sensors all over it, and it uses a lighthouse that shoots out lasers. And this in the headset, these sensors all over it, detect the lasers, and then they know their orientation based on that. See, it has these divots all over it, and then that data is sent to the computer. So, kind of opposite tracking systems. So what then? After I don't know, sometime last year, I got a PlayStation VR because I wanted to play PlayStation VR exclusives like Resident Evil 7, Wipeout Omega Collection, and Astrobot, stuff like that. I just added this thing on top. I can't even remember what it's called, but it's to give you support because, let me show you. Let me just take this thing off. I haven't even tested yet to see if I like this strap, so I should probably just take it off. So PSVR for me is the least comfortable headset I have because most of the weight is on your forehead right up here, and for me that's just not comfortable. But a lot of people say it's really comfortable for them, and you put this behind your head. But see, okay, so there are these see this like rubber thing here. These are supposed to be attached inside this headband back here, but what they do is, see how they're elastic? They pull this headband toward this way. So like it ended up just like constricting my head and squeezing on it. So it was driving me crazy. So I had to detach those so that it wouldn't squeeze on my head anymore. But even with those detached, I just feel like it's too much weight. Whereas Rift and Vive, I think, are extremely comfortable and don't bother me at all because they have a top strap. So most of that weight is just like balanced on the top of your head. So this has a 1920 by 1080 screen, so it's lower resolution than Rift and Vive, but the difference is it's an RGB stripe OLED panel. I'm not sure if it's a stripe because I also read it could be hexagonal, but it's RGB, which means each pixel has a red, green, and a blue subpixel, whereas Vive and Rift are pentile OLED that have 2 subpixels per pixel. So this actually has like more subpixels than Vive and Rift. So the screen door effect is a good deal less, even though it's a lower resolution headset. You see less screen door effect on PSVR. But the problem is it's being powered by a PS4 or a PS4 Pro, which is, considerably weaker than a PC. So it can't really push a lot of pixels or not nearly as many pixels as a PC can. So that's one of the main drawbacks. But the biggest drawback of all for me on this is that the tracking isn't very good. It just has a single camera, the PS4 camera, and you know it can do 360 tracking of the headset, but not of the controllers, because like you have to stay within this specific tracking window, and if you turn too much, it's not going to see you anymore, and if you turn like a complete 180, it's not going to see these at all anymore. You know, these balls light up, and these also have IMUs in them, and you know, accelerometers, and it's just not, your body is going to cover them for one thing, but like the tracking volume isn't very big. It's just this one camera, whereas like Vive uses two lighthouse boxes that send lasers, fill the room up with lasers, and then the Oculus Rift has, you know, cameras, and you can have up to 4 cameras to cover, you know, a bigger area. But that one single PS4 camera just can't cover a big space. So like this is the PSVR aim controller. I mean, this thing's a cool idea, but whenever I've used this thing in shooting games, like it'll start like drifting, and a lot of times you have to shake it, and then it'll somehow get back to where it'll like line up more like 1-to-1 like in the game, but then over time it'll just start to like drift again, and if you're in multiplayer games, you'll see other people shaking their controller too. It's just so annoying, and when you're used to PC VR, it's like, why even mess with it? It's not even worth the hassle. But they have exclusives that are really, really cool. Like I said, Resident Evil 7, Wipeout Omega Collection, Astrobot, stuff like that. I forgot to say, so sometime last year, HTC came out with this wireless adapter. So, where's the battery? Just a second. This battery here clips to your belt or wherever you want to put it. Some people actually attach it to the back of their H&D. I tried that, and it's too heavy though. And there's this USB cable that attaches to the wireless adapter, and the other end attaches to the battery right there. And you just clip it on, and there's a transmitter/receiver thing that you connect to your PC, and you want to put it up as high as you can to get the best, you know, because it needs line of sight to this thing and these antennas. So you go around the room, and for the most part, it's perfect, and it's awesome. And there occasionally, maybe every maybe every 2 hours, you might have like a second or two of like where the screen goes out, and you'll get a gray screen, but that's a small price to pay. This thing can overheat, and I think that's why that happens. Some people will put a tiny fan here, like a USB fan, and that they say that completely fixes the problem. Some other people have like tried to open the case up, and I'm not sure if that works, but it's not that big of a problem. So just last week, this thing came in the mail. This is a Vive Pro. I tried one of these at a Microsoft store. I don't know, sometime last year. I went there to try HoloLens and to try Vive Pro. And my initial reaction was it wasn't that much difference in like the visuals. Because I run like super sampling on this Vive, like 1.8 or 2.0 super sampling, which makes it look really, you know, pretty good. So when I went to the Microsoft store, they put me in like the blue, and my initial reaction was like, I don't know, I can tell it looks better, and the screen door effect is minimized, but it's not enough of a difference to just, this thing costs $800. It was just like wasn't enough of a difference. But I was wondering, and I've been wondering, like, was it just the store? They didn't have it set up well, and like maybe the super sampling wasn't up very high, and I don't know. I just felt like I had to find out for my own. So I bought this, and I've been testing it, and I feel basically the same way as I did in the Microsoft store about it. It's like the resolution of this is the total resolution is 2880 by 1600, and it's a pentile OLED again, just like Rift and Vive. And I think the issue here is the pentile pentile pixel structure. It just makes SDE more apparent. And it's a diamond pentile arrangement. All of them, all of these pentiles. And it's just like, maybe it's because of the 2 subpixels. It just doesn't, like, even when you're increasing the resolution, the resolution by as much as they did. Like the Vive and Rift were 2160 by 1200, and this is 2880 by 1600. And it's just not a big difference. So the other thing that, you know, they changed this whole head mount, and they put some different sound on here. When I first heard the sound, I thought it sucked. But there was in the sound properties, there was like Vive Pro multimedia audio, and that's what it was on, and it sounded terrible. But then I switched it to just like Vive audio, which was another option, and then it sounded good again. It sounded like my regular Vive. So I don't know if that was like an audio device that was installed from my Vive, and that if you didn't have a Vive, all you would see is Vive Pro multimedia audio and have shitty sound. I don't know. The other problem with this for me, well, a couple problems. This space right here is wider. It's almost like they made it for some really giant Shaquille O'Neal head or some shit. Whereas the space on this deluxe audio strap is smaller. Like my head fits in here more tightly, so this thing stays secure. This thing on my head kind of tended to kind of like wobble around because it's a big gap. It's a big gap from here to here. Even though this top strap is wider, it's wider than the Vive's top strap. It's just like didn't feel very stable. And that was even with these ear things down. It just wasn't very stable. But the biggest issue of all for me was that the lenses are supposed to be the same lenses as the Vive, but the sweet spot was noticeably worse immediately to me. Like the outer edges just look blurry to me, and I was like, is this because, so on this thing, you know, it has the original foam, and this is, the original foam here is like, you know, a lot thicker than what I'm used to, this 6mm, my 6mm VR cover pleather thing. So what I did was I have extras of these 6mm ones, and I put it on here, and it improved the sweet spot, but it still was nowhere near as good as the Vive. It was still blurry on the edges. Like text that was close to the edge, it was still blurry. And I went back and forth between this and the Vive, just kept going back and forth, and I just was like, no, I can't deal with that. So I've decided I'm not keeping this. The other headset I recently got is this Pimax 5K Plus. This thing is pretty crazy. You can see these lenses, they are massive. They're crazy huge lenses. This wheel here, oh yeah, I'm on the wrong side. That wheel is the IPD adjustment wheel. It can go down to like, you know, 60. I'm somewhere around 60, so that's fine for me. Let's see. Right here is the headphone jack. Because this doesn't, you know, obviously doesn't have integrated audio, and it has this floppy piece of shit head strap, which is terrible. It doesn't keep it secure on your face. The thing kind of wants to like slide down your face, and like this back part wants to come up. It's pretty bad. Up here's a power switch and 2 volume adjustment things. There's a USB-C on the bottom for you know, attachments like a they have a Leap Motion attachment. I don't know if that's actually out to buy or anything yet. So I tried this thing out. Let me put this on my head. I tried this thing out, and I wasn't expecting a lot. But anyway, when I first put it on, I was like, all right, this is, first of all, this is an RGB stripe. The resolution is It's crazy resolution. 5120 by 1440 RGB stripe LCD. So all of the other HMDs I've talked about before this were OLED. This one's LCD, liquid crystal display. So I put it on and I was like, all right, yeah, this is a lot sharper than every other headset I've tried. It's and like the pixel arrangement, you can tell it's vertical. It's not like all these other headsets that have this pentile diamond thing. They're all like, the pixels are diagonal looking, and they're just more obvious. This vertical pixel structure makes text look better. It makes a lot of things look cleaner. And then of course there's really wide field of view. So as far as field of view options, the default is normal, which normal is it's like out here and it's like an oval. And then if you choose wide, it's the same width. It just kind of becomes a rectangle. It's really what it does. I don't know if it's like 170 degrees horizontal. It's probably what it is. I don't know if it's 170 or 180. But anyway, wide is like this. Normal is like this. And then small, if you do small, it comes into like, here. It's still wider than Vive and Rift. It's like out here somewhere. And Vive and Rift would be more like, in here. So the field of view is really nice. When I went back to Vive after trying this out for a while, I was like, damn, this field of view feels pretty small. But the colors on Vive are still way better. To me, Vive has the best colors of any headset. It's the most vivid, it's the brightest, and the colors look the best. I bought an Odyssey Plus, and that, you could barely see the screen door effect on that. That's because there was like a diffusion layer over the screen to, kind of blur out the screen door effect somehow. It's the same resolution as the regular Odyssey and Vive Pro, which is 2880 by 1600. It's pentile OLED. But because of that diffusion layer, it makes it blurrier, and it makes, just kind of put this like slight white haze over everything. So I still prefer Vive, even though I can see the screen door effect. It's because of its bright colors, and it's so sharp. It's the sharpest headset, to me. So I returned that Odyssey Plus. It also was extremely uncomfortable. It had the same halo design as the PSVR, and then it had a bad sweet spot. So like your eyes had to stay very fixed in one place. If the headset moved at all, like it would become blurry, and like the edges were blurry. The same problem I was having with this Vive Pro, where the edges were blurry, and I don't know why, because it supposedly uses the same lenses as the Vive. So back to this thing. When I first put it on, I was moving my head. I was noticing that the edges were popping in and out as I moved my head. Like even in Steam VR Home, it was just like I could see all this popping in. I was like, "What the hell is this?" And I tried all these different games, and all this like popping in and out on the edges. And then I realized in the there's this thing called Pi Tool. So you have to install this Pi Tool in addition to using Steam VR. So in the Pi Tool, you can adjust settings. That's where you can adjust the field of view. And there's a checkbox that says like allow parallel projections or compatibility for parallel projections. You turn that on, and that fixes the pop-in shit. And some games don't display correctly at all, and doing parallel projections will fix that. But once you do parallel projections, it makes your performance worse. I'm not sure why or what it's having to do, or if it's just having to like render more than it was before. But yeah, it makes your performance worse. So that's obviously a drawback. And I put super sampling to 1.0 on Pi Tool and 1.0 in Steam VR. Because if I put it up where I had it for the Vive, which was like, with Vive Wireless, I keep it at like 1.8 super sampling, which is 180%. I used to do it like up at 200% before I got the wireless, but wireless taxes your system, so I put it down a little bit because you need a powerful CPU to handle wireless. And I have a good CPU that can handle it, but it still needed to go down a little bit to avoid reprojection. Um, so there's something about this thing, this Pimax, that just doesn't feel right. Whenever I've used it, I come out feeling like disoriented and dizzy. My eyes feel weird. I never get eye fatigue, and I never get motion sickness in my other headsets. But in this thing, I think it could definitely happen if I spend a bunch of time in it. I come out of it just feeling weird. The binocular overlap, like there's very obvious binocular overlap going on. It's kind of like where your left eye and your right eye meet up, and like where they overlap. Because of it's such a wide field of view, that's my only guess as to why it's an issue. I don't ever notice it in Vive. I've noticed the binocular overlap in Rift. I'm not sure why. But for some reason Vive has a good binocular overlap, or at least noticeable for me at least. What else about this thing? Like I said, it's sharper, and obviously the field of view, but the edges. There's edge distortion. So like on every edge, as you're moving your head, you're seeing the world warp. Like it's over in these edges over here. Maybe even at the bottom. I'm not positive, but the world is just like, it looks fine here, and then it like warps. It's hard to describe, but it's distortion, and you see it all the time. If you're on wide or normal field of view, it's just, and I just can't stand it. It's just not, something I can live with. Supposedly they're working on the Pi tool, and they're gonna fix it, and it keeps getting better apparently, but who knows if that's really gonna happen. If you put it on small field of view, which was like, I don't know where it was small. Small was like maybe here. If you put it on small field of view, you'll barely see any distortion. Like I might have seen just a little bit, but once you get to small field of view, I kind of feel like, well, what's the point? I mean, you're still getting the high res look and the RGB stripe, and all that. But the one issue with this LCD is, well, the blacks aren't as good, but that's not. I didn't notice that bothering me. Like I wasn't really like at any point when I was playing going like, that black just is too gray looking. I wasn't. But I really did notice was the colors weren't as vibrant. They weren't as bright. They didn't stand out. Like again, this thing, the colors are bright and vivid, and they just weren't. I don't know if it's because this is an LCD or what. If that's just how LCDs are going to be. Like I'm curious, is the Rift S that way? I've never tried an Oculus Go, so I don't know. Is that how that is? I like vibrant colors, and this doesn't have it. This obviously doesn't have wireless. I don't know if they're ever going to come out with that. What else about it? It's kind of been a pain in the ass to use, to be honest with you. So, like sometimes I'll start using it, and when I put it on, I'm inside the floor. And then I'll have to like restart my computer or unplug and replug over and over this thing. Sometimes I put it on and like the screen, what I'm seeing on the screen is all screwed up. It's like there's stripes going through the screen, and it's like, do I need parallel projections on? And then I'll check and I'm like, oh, it's already on. What's the problem? So then I have to like shut down Steam VR, shut down Pi Tool, restart Pi Tool, restart Steam VR, and like hopefully it worked. Sometimes it didn't, and I'll have to be like, all right, well let me restart again, and or let me unplug the thing again, or who the hell knows what. But yeah. So the field of view is nice, obviously, and the sharpness is nice, but I can't live with everything else. I just can't. And like I said, I'm used to not having a wire. That I got the Pro because you can attach your wireless to the Pro. So I already have Vive wireless, but you have to buy a $60 adapter kit to put your Vive wireless on the Pro. So I had to buy that stupid thing, and it was just a piece of foam and a cord and a little shitty piece of plastic that that'll hold it to your Vive Pro. So when I tried Vive Pro, I did wireless, and yeah, I just wasn't impressed with the Pro, nor the Pimax. So, you know, obviously, I'm keeping the Rift for Oculus exclusives. I'm keeping the PSVR for PSVR exclusives. But but Vive is still my number one. Still, even with this, you know, comparatively bad pentile screen door effect, Vive does it for me. It's still the one who can scratch my itch. It's still the one, and I wouldn't switch. We're still having fun, and you're still the one. At least until the Valve Index comes out. That thing might be my next headset, and it might replace this. But if it's wired, I mean, this has a wire obviously, but this just like goes down your back to the battery. If it's wired to the PC, I don't know. It's going to have to be pretty badass for me to prefer it over this wireless freedom of being able to go anywhere in the room. So I have a pretty big play space behind this camera. I can go anywhere in the room. I can spin over and over and over and over. Don't have to worry about it. Another thing about how I play. I never use snap turn, and I never use smooth turn. I didn't use any physical turning. I'm very passionate about not using fake turning. I do physical turn everywhere all the time. Unless I'm using PSVR. In PSVR's case, because of the tracking, sometimes you just have to sit still and use, you know, smooth. I prefer smooth turn if I have to use some sort of artificial turning. But yeah, this is what I recommend. Get wireless if you can. And get VR cover, 6mm. I got VR cover thing for the deluxe audio strap too, and get a wireless adapter. But actually, wait for the Valve Index and see what the hell's going on with that. But yeah, this is my preference. I'm gonna return the Pimax and I'm gonna return the Vive Pro. So that's it. Thanks for watching.